because I feel the school children need more knowledge and appreciation of their own community, and I hope it will be useful to any, because I feel the school children need more knowledge and appreciation of their own community, and I hope it will be useful to anyone with an interest in Palmyra. I am Gera Stilwell, Mrs. John Stilwell Jr., and my partner in this project is Bob Fey. I lived in Palmyra and on a farm north of Palmyra the first 21 years of my life until 1956. Now I have taught kindergarten for Palmyra-Bennet, District OR1, the last 28 years, 1968 to the present. I attended Palmyra School, grades 1 through 12, 1941 through 53. There was no kindergarten at that time. Palmyra School is District 60. This part of the school was built in 1935 following a fire that destroyed the previous 1905 brick school at this same location during Christmas vacation of 1933 or 34. Dorothy Lucas Palmer, class of 26, was running the switchboard at the time. Before that, the school was the first building south of the library, where the Wintons, Hergen Raiders, Goldens, Royals, and Fred Haleys have lived. That building was torn down in 1906 and the lumber used for a barn for Severe's northeast of Palmyra. That school at the north end of Main Street had 2 rooms downstairs and 1 room upstairs and was not separated into grades until 1889. One source mentioned a Palmyra public school in 1870. The school only went through 10th grade until 1918 when it had all 12 grades. This 1935 building used to be red brick and was an improvement in that indoor plumbing, a gym or auditorium, and stage were included. Previous to that, basketball games, plays, and graduations were held downtown in Nash's Hall, where the activities center is now. The 1935 building was enlarged with the bond issue passing in 1953 to include the first kitchen for hot lunches, home ec room, shop, kindergarten room, and a larger gym. This gym is extending to the west. The addition extended north and the gym was enlarged by running it east and west, whereas the 1935 gym ran north and south, where the media center is now. The first hot lunches were served in 1954-55. Kindergarten started in 1950 and was combined with first and second over here on the south end of the building.
Okay.
Grades 3, 4, and 5 were the intermediate room where the science lab is now. This was Sixth, 7th, and 8th grades were the grammar room that was east of the stage. There were windows all along the east, and they can still be seen along the ramp. High school classes were held upstairs. Each family was responsible for getting its children to school before school buses were provided in 1963. Surrounding country schools closed and enrollment grew so that each teacher taught only 1 elementary grade. The Bennet and Palmyra districts merged in 1965 with the elementary at Bennet and grades 7 through 12 at Palmyra. Football and track and girls basketball were added. The Palmyra kindergarten did not move to Bennet until 1986. There was more need to be with the rest of the elementary after kindergarten was changed to a full day on alternating days to save fuel during the energy crisis. On the north, a rural school was moved to the grounds with a basement level added to provide more space before the elementary moved to Bennet. A metal building was added in the 1970s for more high school classrooms. The most recent addition in 1982 went to the east and connected the existing building to a big new gym, stage, balcony weight room, kitchen, office, shop, classrooms, and commons area or lunchroom. There is a study underway at present to meet future building needs.
Okay.
The Catholic Church was started in 1861 when priests would come on horseback from the Nebraska City German Church about once a month. Private homes and the school were used before a frame church was built in 1874, and a brick church was dedicated in 1889. The rectory, or home for the priest, was funded by fairs that lasted as much as 8 days. The priest of Palmyra, St. Leo's, also serves the Douglas and Cheney churches. The first baptism was in the school in 1870. The first cemetery was southwest of town, and the present cemetery was bought from John Taggart. The 1874 church was north of the present one. An annual celebration was held August 15th after the 1889 church was dedicated, with a picnic on the lawn, bingo, and homemade ice cream. Alice Beecham Janucki wrote the church history for the centennial in 1989. Longtime Catholic families are the Malones, Donovans, Van Akerns, Beechams, Royals, Kellys, Roaches, and Mahoneys.
I'm ready. Mm-hmm.
In 1875, there were 12 charter members of the Presbyterian Church, including 2 Thompsons. They met in the schoolhouse in 1871 and erected a church on this present site the next year. In 1901, the original building was moved north and east and was the home of the Witherows, who ran the newspaper, the Palmyra Items, and later was the home of their daughter and family, Mary Conklin, and has since been removed. The present church was dedicated in 1901, and the basement was added in 1925. A Sunday school room was added to the east about 1950. This church is an example of a slanted floor with the low end being on the northwest. From about 1912 to 1925, one pastor served both the Presbyterian and Methodist churches, and that was called a federation. A new minister's home or manse was built in 1953. This year's addition is a new basement, front steps, and ramp on the west side to make the basement handicapped accessible. Longtime Presbyterian families are the Millers, Olsons, Lamburns, Hallowells, Doties, Thompsons, Nashes, Wilhelms, Mabins, Stedmans, Wallens, Feys, and Powerses. The Presbyterian minister also serves the Hopewell Church south of Unadilla. We are now looking north, and this would show the beautiful stained glass windows and also the government-required, handicapped, accessible entries that we now need to have. Methodist services started in 1865 in private homes. The first building used in 1874 to 1890 was brought from Bennet and was later sold and moved to the south part of town for a home. A new church was built in 1890 and it was remodeled and a basement added in 1926. The first house north was the parsonage until it was sold in 1945. There have been many student pastors from Wesleyan University in Lincoln. The Methodist ladies earned money at a food stand at Old Settlers to pay for sidewalks in 1892, and the food stand continued for many years with the churches taking turns alphabetically. Longtime Methodist families are the Stanleys, Monahans, Harts, G's, Wemples, Stoners, Smiths, Dowdings, Severes, and Lashleys. In 1871, the first pastor of the Baptist Church was John M. Taggart, founder of Palmyra. The church was finished in July 1879. They baptized in the Nemaha River until they had a church. During the first 60 years, twice as many died or moved than were left. A basement was added and the parsonage was torn down. They voted to close in 1978. Longtime members were the Lannings, Taylors, Douglases, Rotons, Morrells, Flaggs, Dowdings, and Rudges. This building has 1907 on the front steps. 12 Lutheran families began holding services at the Nash Jensen Legion Hall in 1979 and have since built this newest church in Palmyra in 1984 and added on in 1991. Some of these Lutheran families are the Roy Thompsons, Schroeders, Carters, Straubys, and Lees. Three rows of houses were built in the 1960s on Mahoney's addition. In the past, in the fall of the year, the churches took turns having their annual suppers and bazaars in this order: Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, and Catholic. John M. Taggart, 1817 to 1887, built the first church in the state at Brownville and came on to Palmyra and gave half his homestead for the town. He laid out the town in 1870 and gave land for the 4 churches, this park, and a school in 1871. He was a Baptist minister, architect, stonecutter, and a member of the territorial legislature. R.M. Taggart was the postmaster, taught school, and bought the lumber yard in 1880. After many of the trees in the park died, they had a community tree planting bee on Arbor Day one year. The Taggart home was west of the school where the present football field is, near the Dan Snyder home. The Ralph Roach family lived there in the 1950s, and it was moved to its present location 1 block south of the Baptist church when the school added football and track. Palmyra is unusual in that Illinois Street, known as the Angling Street, and runs from the north intersection of Main Street to the park. Taggart's home, 1914, has been the location of many old settlers' picnics since 1899. Band concerts were important, so there was a bandstand in the center of the park until vandals burned it in 1973.
Okay.
This slippery slide was given in memory of John M. Stilwell, Sr. at the time of his death in 1976. The family had lived across the street south from the park. Since there no longer was a bandstand, this gazebo was added to the park in the 1980s with volunteer labor.
Mm-hmm.
The Palmyra sign on the inside of the shelter is from the original depot near the railroad tracks. That building was torn down, and this shelter was made from the lumber by Bob Fey for the bicentennial in 1976.
And others.
With the help of others.
You're right.
Yes. We are looking north now in Taggart Park, and you'll see the tennis court that was added, the ball field in the 1980s, and the basketball court, and there briefly was a sand volleyball court in the 1990s. Other ball fields have been in the pasture southeast of the elevator on Charlie Morrell's, north of the present field, and west of the current football field. During World War II, there was a ground observers corps platform in the park, and people took turns watching for enemy planes. The Old Settlers Picnic started in 1887, and early June has been the usual time. Squire Edwin H. Baldwin, Floyd's ancestor, who came to Palmyra from New York in 1877, O.A. Sevier,